It is time now for Morning Rounds. Joining us are CBS News chief medical correspondent Dr. John LaPook and CBS News contributor Dr. Holly Phillips. First up this week, a new study says each case of autism in the U.S. costs $2.4 million over a lifetime. That includes the expense of special education for children diagnosed with the disorder and lost productivity for their parents. Meanwhile, 85% of autistic adults are jobless or underemployed. But Michelle Miller visited one company where a new program is helping some of them succeed.
For much of his adult life, 28-year-old Patrick Viesti has worked to keep the signs of Asperger's syndrome at bay. But even after a successful college career, finding a job was tough.
To truly be honest, I would have to say it was quite difficult.
Viesti says he'd come off stiff or monotone during the interview process, but his luck changed thanks to a software company he now works for. SAP recruited him and a number of other new hires this year because of their autism.
It means that someone is willing to give them a chance to say to them, I want you because I want you for your skills. I want you for the experience that you bring to the table.
The program is the brainchild of Torkil Sohn, whose 17-year-old son Lars is autistic. He realized that while those with autism might lack the social skills recruiters are looking for, they do possess many attributes high on their radar as well. Intelligence and memory, the ability to see patterns, and attention to detail on repetitive tasks.
If we could use skills like what I saw among people with autism in software testing, data analysis, quality control, that would be phenomenal.
And go ahead and click on the Wi-Fi.
An important part of leveraging the unique skills of autistic workers is creating a comfort zone. For example, employees with autism may suffer low self-esteem and feel stressed. A solution? Clearly stated goals, and failing to get the water cooler talk or sarcasm can be helped by direct communication.
You just want to make sure that you're successful.
As Viesti digs into his job as an IT project associate, his Asperger's is out in the open. But he'd rather showcase his talents.
When you meet someone on the job, what is it that they need to know about you?
I want to be able to work with them, bring out the very best within them.
In Michelle's piece, she mentions that comfort zone. Do the other employees need specific training to help with the autistic employees?
They absolutely have to. Autism spectrum disorder affects 1 in 68 people, and people aren't aware that it even exists. So they have to realize this is not just a pity party. These are people who actually have specific skills that they might not have themselves, and they can contribute. I loved so much when Patrick talked about being able to contribute to what was going on.
John, there was also news about Google and autism this week. Tell us about that.
Well, we're realizing now that autism spectrum disorder is not just one problem, it's a spectrum of problems, and that there's genetic basis for an increasing number of people. We're trying to actually realize what on a genetic basis is going on. And so we've actually have a program where Google and Autism Speaks have gotten together, and they've collected specimens from people with autism and along the spectrum and their families, and they have those specimens, and they're actually figuring out what the genomes look like, and they're trying to match up those genomes with the problems, and hopefully over time they'll have some insight of interest. Why do you need Google? Well, one of these genomes it's the equivalent of downloading about 100 iTunes from movies.
Wow.
from the web, so it's a lot of data. You need a big company like that. You need the cloud.
Also this week, there was fresh advice on fish. The FDA says pregnant women and young children aren't eating enough seafood. Holly, tell us about this.
You know, Anthony, this is really a paradigm shift in how we're thinking about fish consumption for pregnant women, breastfeeding women, and as well as kids. Up to now, the FDA has just set a maximum amount that pregnant women should have of 12 ounces a week out of concerns of too much mercury intake. But then they realized there was an analysis done that showed a lot of pregnant women were just avoiding it altogether. They said, well, if I can't have more than 12 ounces, maybe I should just avoid it altogether and I'm better. But it turns out fish is really important with omega-3 fatty acids for cognitive development, for the IQ of the baby, and the mother can benefit as well. So now the FDA has added a minimum of 8 ounces a week, which is about 2 or 3 servings. They want to make sure women are getting some fish in.
I've been trying so hard to enforce this in our house, also fish at least twice a week.
Right.
But I never know, are there certain types of fish that are considered better for you and have better products for your body?
Sure. Well, smaller fish tend to have less mercury, which is something that, has built up in our oceans, and fish absorbs mercury. Too much mercury can actually be bad for us. You have to take in a lot to really see those negative effects. But smaller fish like tilapia, we have it 3 or 4 times in our house, cod, salmon, and canned light tuna are considered some of the better fish to have.
You mentioned the mercury concerns. Are there still some fish that we should avoid?
The highest mercury fish, we're looking at shark, swordfish, king mackerel, tilefish. Actually, those aren't the most common fish,
Sure.
but so it should be pretty easy to avoid them. You can get large amounts of mercury, though, in just a few servings of those.
But you see more and more swordfish now, so it's good for people to know that that could be one of the ones.
Absolutely.
Well, there was some promising news this week for people who are trying to quit smoking. Researchers at George Washington University developed a phone texting program. Up to 5 times a day, it sends personalized information about kicking the habit. Smokers who got the text were twice as likely to quit as smokers who got other kinds of self-help materials. The texts include details on health benefits as well as on money saved by quitting.
Nearly 27 million Americans over the age of 25 are diagnosed with osteoarthritis in their knees. And this week, there was some new advice on how to reduce mobility problems that often accompany the disease. John, tell us about this study.
Well, the instinct for people with osteoarthritis is maybe to move less. And what this study told us, it suggested that you really need to move more. They followed people who are older, who are at high risk for osteoarthritis, and they basically said, if you move more, do you have more or less functional problems? In other words, problems getting out of a chair, just more discomfort. And it turns out the more you moved, the less discomfort you have. It's kind of a use it or lose it. And they said, start at about 3,000 steps a day and move up.
Well, you mentioned the number. I also saw 6,000 steps, and I have to be honest, I don't have a frame of reference for how much is 6,000 steps.
Right. It's actually not as much as we might think. So the average person takes about 100 steps in a minute of walking. So 6,000 steps represents about an hour of walking, and that's what's recommended for people who have osteoarthritis. But the key is it doesn't have to be all at once. It's an hour of walking through the whole day. So maybe 5 minutes of walking to the store, 5 minutes back, and then later in the day you do another 5 minutes here and there. As long as it adds up to an hour, that's when you start to see your benefits.